today. They'll come out shortly. They just had a bit of a rude awakening getting rolled out.
And where did you, are they in the wild or the...
No, they came into me last autumn. They were both pretty sick.
And how did they get to you?
People find them and drop them in at the vets or bring them straight to me. I've got another one to pick up tomorrow that's got very bad pneumonia.
The hedgehog has pneumonia?
Hedgehog.
And how do they know they have pneumonia?
Well, they have snotty snouts, very poor breathing. This one's actually got pus coming out its mouth. It's awfully sick. A lot of them came in this year with pneumonia, practically every single one that was found, because they're sleeping in wet little nests and things, and the cold and the wet together doesn't help.
No,
and they
like
come
humans.
in with terrible bad breathing. And animal hospital's very, very good with them. I've got one in my kitchen at the moment. It's had a long-acting antibiotic, and it's still doing the odd cough, unfortunately. But anyway.
In your kitchen?
Where else? One day when I have a little bit of money put aside, I'd love to have an animal room, because all the injured animals, I've got an injured bird in the kitchen, I've got a hedgehog with pneumonia in the kitchen. Anything else that comes in will be in the kitchen as well.
They're very common, are they? Are they many of them around?
No, that's the problem.
Are they on the decline?
They're on the decline. Now, why do you think there's less hedgehogs, girls and boys? One at a time.
Cars run them over. Because
Cars
they can't
run
see
over
them.
them, that's right. What else?
They don't have enough food because the winters are getting colder and there's not many worms. No, the summers are getting hotter and the worms aren't coming up anymore.
And there's habitat destruction as well, because people are digging up hedges and cleaning off the sides of the road and cutting down bushes. But my pet hate is something called slug pellets. Who knows what slug pellets are?
You put them on plants to keep slugs from eating them, but then when it rains they wash into the ground.
Yeah, they're little blue crystals. And they poison the slugs and snails. Then the hedgehogs come along and see a slug thinking, oh, what a lovely dinner, and eats a slug, and then the hedgehog dies. The poor thrushes fly in, pick up a dead slug, and then the thrushes die. Slug pellets are deadly. And they're deadly to cats and dogs and anything else. There's some sort of taste in them that once an animal starts eating them, they just don't stop. And they're killers. Now, if you want to kill slugs and snails particularly, you can take a little margarine box, fill it with old beer. The slugs will walk in there and they'll die terribly happily, drunk as skunks. And that's the end of them. And if a hedgehog eats a drunk dead slug or snail, it does nothing to them. So you can do that, and it's not dangerous. I mean, even small children, you wouldn't want them getting near slug pellets. Now let's start off with the beginnings of this hedgehog story. Hedgehogs are born round about July. Their mothers carry them. The gestation period is between 30 and 40 days. And they have these tiny little babies, about the colour of my glove, with very soft prickles. Why do you think all their prickles are very soft when they're so small?
Because they haven't had time to stick up and develop yet.
Yeah, but they'd want to be very soft for the mother to give birth to them. If the mother gave birth to a hedgehog with prickles like that, she'd be in an awful state of bother. Okay, so a big hedgehog would have between 4 and 6 babies, and the smaller hedgehogs have 3 or 4 babies, okay? And the mother would mind the babies for about 6 weeks, and they'd follow her around. You'd sometimes see a mother hedgehog walking out ahead, and 4 or 6 little babies walking along behind. And they'd see what she's eating and digging up the worms and whatever, and then they learn what to do. And at about 6 weeks, mother says, right, I've had enough of you guys, and off she goes, and the babies have to mind themselves. And very often, at least half of the litter will die, because they won't be able to do their own hunting. And the fathers have nothing to do with the rearing of the babies at all, because adult hedgehogs are solitary. And what does that mean? They like to live by themselves. So sometimes, on the rare occasion, a female hedgehog would have a second litter around about September. But the problem with that is the babies are never ready. When the mother hedgehogs have babies in September, you'll find they're far too small to hibernate and they will die. Because the hedgehog has to have enough weight on it before it hibernates. So this one is particularly nice and plump. And you'll find they gain a lot of weight, and then when they're sleeping or dozing during the winter, they live off the brown fat on their shoulders. And then they burn that slowly to keep them going. And very often during the winter, they'd wake up on a nice day and they'd go foraging looking for something to eat, and then they'd go back to sleep again. So the ones that come into me during the year that have been injured, I'd keep for the hibernation period. But in the places where I let them hibernate, I always have dry cat food and I have water. So if they wake up, they can have a good nibble, eat something, and then go back to sleep again. Now, I never leave wet food out. Why do you think?
If they're cold.
The wet food would go moldy. And if they eat moldy food, they'll get problems with their lungs. So I would never leave food like that out for them. That's just a treat, okay? Now, if you find a hedgehog wandering around during the day, always pick it up, bring it into Mrs. Fleming, and she can phone me and I'd come and collect it. I'm sure you'd be delighted.
I'd be delighted.
Because there's definitely something wrong with them. If they're walking around during the day, they're sick and they need help. And somebody this morning said to me, what about fleas? People are obsessed with fleas, aren't they?
Do you know what fleas are?
Yeah.
Well, this morning, everybody knew what fleas were.
Some people
Nobody
might.
knows now. You don't see them anymore.
Well, anyway, hedgehog fleas are species specific. They're only going to bite hedgehogs. They're not going to go on a dog, a cat, a human, or anything else. They only like hedgehog blood. So it must taste very nice, but they just have hedgehogs. And ticks as well. But normally if a hedgehog is in good health, it wouldn't have fleas and ticks anyway. Another thing about hedgehogs is its front feet. Now, if this would start walking around, we'll see them. They've got very long nails on their front feet. Why do you think they have long nails?
So that they can dig and get the worms.
That's right. Excellent. And where do most hedgehogs live?
Under a hedge.
Yes, good.
Sometimes under leaves.
They do. They'd actually find little holes that other animals have made, and they'd take them over. And they'd drag in leaves and bits of dry grass and all sorts of things to make a nice cozy nest. But with the winters we've had lately, their nests aren't very cozy because half of them are sodden wet, and that's how you get so many sick hedgehogs with pneumonia and whatnot, because they're lying in the damp and in the cold. And they're getting disturbed by people building houses and things where, well, just habitat destruction in general. Dogs disturb them, foxes disturb them. How do you think a fox would have a go at a hedgehog?
They've knocked them over first.
That's right, they've rolled them over, and if they get them near water, the fox is very clever. He'd actually roll them into the water, and the hedgehog would then open up and start to swim, and the fox would get them underneath their tummies and have a go at them that way. Now, oh, here's his little faces out. Oh, back down again. They've got very poor eyesight and not very good hearing, but they can sniff and smell for miles. Now, I've brought this along because I went to one school, which shall remain nameless, and the hedgehog was in the middle of the floor, as I used to have them here before,
Yes.
sitting down, and the hedgehog took off like a streak of light into the back of the classroom where the bookcase was, got behind the bookcase, and came out triumphantly dragging a sandwich. The teacher was mortified because it looked like she never cleaned her room. So
Do you get the smell?
they got the smell.
No, I get the smell.
You get the smell?
The smell of the hedgehog.
Oh,
I get it.
I've got virtually no sense of smell, never have had, so I'm very fortunate in that way. And they've got lovely sharp little teeth, and that's for cracking the snail shells. If I find big snails, I put them in for them, and you can actually hear them crunching and cracking the snails. And they actually froth at the mouth, they're enjoying them so much. Must be French.
Sweet. What do
Now
you call
the-
a creature that can eat plants and other creatures? Omnivores.
Well, the plants that they like the most are bananas. If anyone has a banana handy, they absolutely love bananas, apparently.
Even though bananas wouldn't be part of their diet in Ireland.
Not
we don't-
normally, no,
Yeah.
but they do enjoy it. Now, there's 15 different species of hedgehogs, and you get hedgehogs in Asia, Africa, and in Europe. Now, these are obviously
Ari,
European
have you
hedgehogs.
hedgehogs in India? No. You sure? Right.
But they've now actually,
Hedgehogs in Poland?
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
good.
people have now
Once they're-
taken hedgehogs to New Zealand, believe it or not.
And they weren't there.
They weren't there at all.
And will that disturb the
Well, it could very well.
biodiversity?
It could very well. I mean, look what minks are doing here. Look at its dear little face. And underneath it's lovely and soft.
I can see its claws.
And they're both males. And I've been rescuing animals now for about 50 years. And in all that time, I've had exactly one female hedgehog.
Gotta make it
What does that
famous.
tell you?
They're more like...
No, the females can look
Are
after
stronger.
themselves. The little boys sort of say, help.
Big fella shy, is he?
But I think he was so busy this morning, he's most probably...
What's the word for the
Collapse.
creatures that come out at
Nocturnal.
night rather than during the day? What's that word? Nocturnal.
Yeah.
That's why if you see them during the day, it's not right.
Now these are very tasty, they'd be eaten in Africa.
Seriously.
Oh, and well, if you're so protein hungry, they eat rats, they eat everything. And they get packed with lovely orange clay all around them. And then they get put in a hole in the ground with charcoal and so on and slowly cooked. And then when they take the clay off them, all the prickles are stuck in the clay. And you'd have a nice little bit of meat.
Actually, I'm just
Hungry
thinking,
enough, you eat anything.
Alex's parents are from South Africa. Noelene grew up in South Africa.
There you go,
Were
yeah.
you in South Africa?
His
Karate Afrikaans? No, obviously not. What part of South Africa were they?
I think Cape Town.
Cape Town. Best part of South Africa, let me tell you. Now this little fellow was walking around and he comes up to the bars and tries chewing your clothes for some reason.
How can Noelene tell the difference between each of them?
One of them's
The colour.
harsher. And
The
one of them
colour
has
of the
the
spines.
prickles.
Yeah, that one's darker, this one's sort of brownier. Now once and once only I've had baby hedgehogs to rear, and I mean tiny ones. The 4 of them could actually fit into a very large matchbox.
Really?
And they were grey. Their prickles were soft and rubbery, and they looked like nail brushes basically. But unfortunately, none of them survived.
Could you hold them with your bare hands? Without like...
With the babies, yes. They actually, when I finished feeding them with a dropper, they used to put their 2 little front feet on my finger, and they had to hang there, and I had to massage their tummies. And you could actually see through their skin. You could see the milk moving down through the digestive tract. It was very interesting. But now, one thing you must never do if you find a hedgehog is give it cow's milk, because they'll get the squits and they will die. You all know what the squits are?
Diarrhea.
Diarrhea.
Because you said that when I got my cats.
Yeah,
Yeah, cats are
definitely.
cats are like
The only milk they can have is kitten milk replacer. Just mind that finger in case it takes a liking to it.
How could you ever keep it as a pet?
Well, several people have asked me that. Those are wild animals, and I think it's very cruel to keep them as pets. Because hedgehogs can march around for about 5 miles. I don't know what that is in kilometers, but it's a lot. They walk around a lot.
8 kilometers.
So they certainly wouldn't want to be kept as pets.
Which one is more alive? That one moving.
The little fella.
Is there any like trying to the other one that gets a bit livelier?
Well, you see, the thing is, because they're nocturnal, this is like 2 o'clock in the morning to them. So if your mother got visitors and said, now hop up, my dear, and you're going to come and say hello to the visitors and entertain them, you'd most probably be yawning your head off and dying to go back to bed. Well, that's how they feel. But this one's just a bit more nosy and active. Now I have several others that are in various stages of recuperation from pneumonia, but these are the 2 healthy ones. Now they're going to go and visit another school on Monday, and then they're going to be set free.
Where will you set them free?
I actually have a waiting list for people who want hedgehogs for their organic gardens.
And what do they do in the gardens, Novisus? Why would somebody want a hedgehog in their organic
Because
garden?
they eat the slugs.
And because they'll
That's
like
right.
eat the slugs when the slugs
Yeah.
don't.
Slugs and snails and whatever. They're great to have around, actually.
Do you have other animals down there?
I have dogs and cats and a ferret and rabbits and injured birds and guinea pigs and You'll be surprised what people think they positively have to buy for their children, and then a few months later they positively have to get rid of.
Sorry.
And how did you get involved in it in the first place?
Oh my God, I had animals since I can remember. I didn't have toys, and the big red gentleman didn't visit me, but I had heaps of animals since I was a child.
In South Africa?
When I was 11, I actually reared 2 baby lions. My father came home, he said, they haven't got a mother, you're their mother. And I was getting up at 2 o'clock every morning, age 11, making bottles for lions. And I've had a pet pig, I've had monkeys, I've had all sorts of poultry, baby lambs, dogs, cats, but basically everything that could crawl and squeak.
Did you have like a farm out there?
I lived on the side of a mountain,
Oh.
and it was wild all around me. And baboons would come down in the backyard and things like that, which this country would be a bit odd to think about. But it was a lovely life, wonderful climate.
Do you ever have any lizards or stuff like that, like reptiles?
The reptiles, the only reptiles that I had as pets were tortoises, but my mother used to regularly let them go. But I had a marvellous doctor, Dr. White would love this story. In South Africa, when you were little, I was convinced the only injection you got was one size fits all. You could have iced a cake with it, and the doctors would come along with this huge injection, and most children would start howling, and they'd be promised a lollipop. But I had a wonderful doctor that used to say, now if you don't cry and make a fuss, you can go to my house when you're better, and you can get a chameleon out of the hedge. But you could have ran the injection through my head, I would have been quiet just to get a chameleon. And you'd go along with a shoebox, and you'd go to his house and knock on the door, and his wife would answer the door and say, yes, knowing full well while you were there. And she said, now you go to the hedge and find a chameleon, and I just get the big fat chameleon, put it in my box, bring it home. And of course it wandered off after a while, or my mother most probably released them. But that was the cure for me, anything to do with an animal. And at school we used to have this class mouse or the class hamster or whatever, and that was always my job as well.
Grazie.
Is it safe to hold hedgehogs with bare hand?
Well, some of them I can, but these 2 haven't been handled for months, so they really stick out their prickles. That's why I've got these gloves on, which are not that great actually. I should have the strong gardening gloves. But this fella I think would love to come out actually. Well, I had a marvellous pig. My father came home one day and said, there's a present for you in the back of the car. So I ran down the stone steps, opened the back of the car. There was a big sack, and it was wriggling, and I said, oh, another puppy. Oh, I was delighted, and out came a little pig. I'm not joking about that size. No, it grew into a huge pig. But it was a run to the litter, and the farmer would have killed it. So my father said, oh, I'll take it home. And I got this little pig, and he grew up with the dogs, and he was convinced he was a dog. So if the dogs chased somebody, the pig chased it as well. And one fine day, the pig came out and caught the butcher and bit him on the backside. Shot him. And my mother, poor little lady, was only, if I stood up straight, she only came up to my nose. I mean, she was tiny. And I came in the kitchen and she said, that pig has finally shot his bolt, and she was up to her full height. And I said, why, what's wrong? She said, he's bitten the butcher. Well, I just roared. I mean, I thought it was hilarious.
It is, yeah.
And she said, there's no need to laugh. She said, you should see the state of that man's butter. Well, of course, that just did it. I was hysterical. Anyway, the pig was duly put in the pot because he had done his bit. Ouch. Now you're being silly. Come on.
You don't kiss them, no?
No, I haven't got that far.
It costs money to keep all this going, does it?
It does indeed.
And how do you manage that?
Well, I'm wearing 20-year-old trousers and a second-hand shirt, that should tell you.
So how do you get the money, Noelene?
Last year I got 5,000 from the government, but I mean that didn't cover half of the vet's bills. The vet's bills are about 10,000 a year. So you do church gate collections and Like for instance, tomorrow I'm getting a load of free animal food that's slightly out of date. That's, you know, stop huffing and puffing and
So
come
if you
out.
see, what's Nolene's organisation called?
Mayo.
Mayo Annual Welfare.
It's, usually, I think if you know, remember from before, they'd open up and come
That's
out.
right,
I
because
wonder
we're
if-
running around the last time we
I
brought
wonder
them
if you
in.
put him on top of the
Be
table.
careful, Harry.
Oh, yes, the other one's waking up.
Is he woken up?
Go back in.
Has anyone got a bit of meaty sandwich or a bit of banana or something? We'll just put it in front of
Do
it.
they like
Got banana
apples?
food.
Do the hedgehogs like apples?
They're supposed to, but they don't like them as much as people think they like them.
I have an apple.
Now, the one that's in the kitchen that's getting a lot of handling because he's sick.
Yeah.
He doesn't behave like this at all. But these two have just been taken out of their hibernation boxes this morning for the first time.
So it's like they've had a rude awakening. Be careful with that and wash your hands afterwards. Wash your hands. Anybody who's
There you can
touched
see
that, please wash your hands.
if I, there you can see this the soft hair, can you, in his face. They're not doing very much, I must say.
Are there any more questions about the hedgehogs?
Would you be able to like make an artificial home for them? Would you be able to make something that they'd like want to live in?
Yeah,
Well, the people that I give them to normally have tiny little boxes about the size of that plastic box made out of timber with a tilted roof and so on, like a mini dog kennel. And they put food out, and the hedgehog might hang around 2 or 3 days, but then the wanderlust gets to them and off they go. I mean, they are wild animals after all. I know you can go to Hawkins now and you can buy tiny hedgehogs. Oh, that might do the trick.
Temptation, huh?
You can go to Hawkins and buy little North African hedgehogs. They're about the size of my hand.
Would it be cruel if you
I
catch
think
one
it's
as a pet?
crazy. It is cruel. It's really cruel.
Did you get what?
If you keep them as pets, I
Oh,
think
yeah,
it
yeah.
is rather cruel because they're wanderers. They love wandering about. But these are the ones they sell from North Africa. Apparently they don't hibernate, and they sell, you know, the hamster wheels. The hamsters, they sell those for the poor little hedgehogs to exercise on. But I mean, they're wild animals. They're not. I personally wouldn't recommend keeping them as pets.
Does it hurt when you hurt them?
It can hurt if they prickle up straight away. Is he coming out?
Yeah, you can see his on his nose.
You
You can see his nose. You can just see his nose.
He was probably wondering what processed meat is because he's never seen it before. I would chop up raw chicken for them and beat up a raw egg, and they really enjoy that. And I give them cat food because it's better for them than dog food because it's got more fat in it.